there needs to be more leadership from both Farage and from Rupert Lowe. And part of that leadership, I think, is the kiss and make up between the two of them. I think Ben Habib should broker the deal.
Is there a bold solution being developed to deal with the growing Reform UK civil war? Andre Walker, a long-time Conservative who defected to Reform UK and is close to Nigel Farage, so close that he was backstage with him at the Birmingham rally on Friday night, has made a number of bombshell proposals to Reform's leadership to reunite the warring party. And they include hiring Ben Habib, who, as you'll know, has been on the attack against Nigel, to be reappointed within the party to lead a transition team, a US-style transition team, preparing reform for government.
Let's have a go at Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is an egotist who has a solidly poor track record of dealing with people who overshadow him. And his personal ego has caused the party significant damage in the past. And what I would say is, with both Lowe and Farage, you can't get to where you get to, chairman of Southampton Football Club, leader of UKIP and now leader of Reform, unless you're single-minded.
Now, let's just see exactly how this could potentially work.
There needs to be more leadership from both Farage and from Rupert Lowe. And part of that leadership, I think, is the kiss and make up between the two of them. I think Ben Habib should broker the deal because he knows both and is highly trusted. He is the kind of pope, if you like, of our religion, of patriotism and right-wingery. God, the religious metaphors have gone far too far. But that's what we have to do. And we have to take seriously this concept of not saying, I support him or I support him, and take seriously this concept of not saying, I'm not watching Andre anymore because he hasn't supported Rupert, or I'm not watching my Tuesday anymore because he's not supported Nigel. We have to get into the mindset of recognising that unity is strength and disunity is weakness.
Okay, so that's the plan. Bring Rupert Lowe back into the fold, end the police investigation, end the bitter recriminations of the past month. Now, I've been speaking to my Reform sources who tell me that such a proposal would hinge on Zia Yusuf being prepared to stand down as chairman, perhaps with a promise internally that he would be part of Reform's first cabinet. However, a Farage confidant has told me that Habib's ongoing attacks on Zia Yusuf have made Nigel even more determined to stand by his man, hence why he included this very public declaration in Birmingham.
Zia has given dedication, hard work, belief, helping me, helping us do what we can do. Zia, as chairman, is an absolute superstar and has a major future in British politics. Where is he? Where is he? He's somewhere. I saw him in the green room. He's somewhere.
But it was telling, of course, that Zia Yusuf wasn't on stage. He didn't give a speech amid fears that he could be booed by the Rupert Lowe fans who the security had to silence throughout that event. The problem is, and by the way, I don't blame him for this, but Rupert Lowe isn't toning down his rhetoric either. He is quite rightly furious that the MSM broadcast media, including GB News, I'm told at the behest of Farage, have totally ignored the extraordinary launch of the rape gang inquiry, which is now hurtling towards raising £450,000. Not bad for a bunch of Indian bots, right? Now, the Daily Telegraph, kudos to them, because they did give him the space to reveal why he is crowdfunding this proper inquiry, where he made a pledge not to be deterred by allegations of racism because he will hound down the truth, however vile it might be. But he did attack Farage in quite a strident manner in the article, writing, "Firstly, I would like to start with an apology. In January, my former party Reform UK made a number of bold promises stating that they would launch and hold an inquiry into the rape gang scandal. That never materialised. In my view, that is not how politics should be conducted, particularly on an issue of such magnitude. I pushed behind the scenes hard, but I was unsuccessful. For my role in that, I apologise. Farage and Reform used it for political capital, but failed to deliver any real action. Their pledge gave so much hope to so many millions. To renege on that once the headlines had moved on is politics at its very worst. This is what the inquiry will do. We will not be deterred by baseless allegations of racism or Islamophobia. We will hound down the truth, however vile it may be. A qualified panel has currently been assembled, including a victim representative who was groomed and raped for many years herself. We will fund a legal advisory team to support the panel, and all hearings will be live streamed. Every pound spent will be transparently published. In January, it looked like something might finally change for the victims. Justice might finally come. In the end, nothing did. This inquiry is the only way we can change that. I hope you will consider supporting it. And I mean, how can you have an issue with that? It was a promise made by Nigel Farage, and I think it was a promise Reform should have kept. And while Reform has taken a significant dip in both polling and membership numbers, you've got to remember the overall political scenario, where there is a real opportunity to pick off Labour heavy hitters at the next election one by one. I mean, look at these latest statistics, revealing that a stunning 13 Labour cabinet ministers could be defeated. Angela Rayner to Reform. It would be deformed if she was in it. Shabnam Mahmood to an independent. Ed Miliband to Reform. Bridget Phillipson to Report. Wes Streeting to an independent. Rachel Reeves to Reform. Liz Kendall to Reform. Yvette Cooper to Reform. John Healey to Reform. Jonathan Reynolds to Reform. Heidi Alexander to the Conservatives. Lisa Nandy to Reform. Pat McFadden to Reform. Whoa. Meanwhile, though, Reform has wasted so much political capital at a time when the government is ripe for destruction on so many issues. Take these two examples from today's superstar panel. Bernie Spofford has concentrated on this threat from the United States, with Trump saying that Britain won't get a trade deal until Starmer restores free speech to British citizens. Bernie writes, "You want a white knight? Trump just played the Queen's Gambit. I might cry. Outstanding move." And what about this lunacy of slippery Starmer governing based on a fictitious Netflix show, Adolescence, which, by the way, changed the ethnicity of the murderer at the centre of the drama from a black teenager to a young working class white lad from a nuclear family in Liverpool? Starmer, by the way, has now twice described this absolute work of fiction as a documentary. And Charlie Downs posted on this, it is fair to say that governing on the basis of fiction is a sign of a deeply unwell society. As with so much of what goes on in modern Britain, this too will be looked back upon our descendants as a symptom of madness. And both Bernie and Charlie join me now. Okay, so can the Reform UK civil war be solved, Charlie Downs? What do you make of this momentum gathering behind an idea put forward by Andre Walker directly to Nigel Farage to put Ben Habib in charge of a transition team and use him to bring Rupert Lowe back into the fold?
Dan, I've been in Reform's orbit for a number of years now, and I know senior members of the party, and I spoke to them today about this proposition. And what they're saying is it's just not going to happen, because as much as it is a nice idea, and as much as I personally would love to see Ben and Rupert reconcile with Farage, I don't see it happening anytime soon, because, for instance, Ben Habib, somebody who I know reasonably well and whom I respect, he continues to attack Farage online, on X, and on broadcast media. The same is true of Rupert Lowe, another man who I know reasonably well and respect hugely, but he also continues to take shots at Reform. And what the senior members of Reform that I've spoken to have said is, Farage is not taking those shots back at them and is more interested in winning the country. Now, whether you believe that or not is, up for the audience to decide. But what I would say is this is not a political dispute. That's really the message that I'm receiving, having had conversations with all of the people involved in this. It's a personal thing, right? Farage feels personally slighted by the comments and activities of both Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib, and I can't help but think that the bridge is burned, to be honest with you. And as depressing as that is to say, because I think that Ben and Rupert are both spectacular politicians. I think that they both know what time it is. They understand the bleak condition of the nation, and I would love to see them in Reform UK. But whether that's actually going to be possible, I think, is very much up for debate. And again, from the conversations I had, it sounds pretty unlikely.
Bernie Spofforth, isn't that then putting ego and personal rows ahead of saving the United Kingdom?
Yeah. And it was always going to be that. You've got 5 large egos all fighting for control over a party more than caring about the policies they're going to put out to the country. Because let's face it, Reform's big policy used to be deport illegal migrants, right? But they haven't told you how they're going to do that. Because if you get rid of all your documentation, where are you going to send them? Who are you going to send them back to? It's the same with Rupert and Ben. And I know that Ben is fronting the Great British PAC, which for the viewers that don't know is it's like a lobbying group, and it's a big thing in America, and they bring in their policies. They're hugely funded by very wealthy people, and they push the party to take their policies forward. And some of those policies within the PAC, Reform don't want to take forward. What amazes me is that what none of these blokes have ever bothered telling any of the British public is you can't do any of them. Right, you can't do it. You can't even do the Great Repeal Act, because if you start to push the Great Repeal Act, then what happened to Liz will look like jam on toast in the morning, because the banks won't stand for it. The central bank, the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements will absolutely crush Britain's economy. And they are not talking about how they're going to put any of their policies in place. They just want the British public to think they're going to deport everybody, right? It's not going to happen. Neither of them have, I've seen, and I've watched a great deal, probably like you, probably like Charlie, outside of that microcosm of huge problem in the UK, no one's talking about anything. They're not talking about funding anything, because you can't get blood out of a stone. And currently, Britain is a stone.
But first, we've partnered with Gundry MD to share this information with you. Would you believe me if I told you inside your pantry right now is one of the healthiest foods on the planet? Yep, it's true. It's not some weird trendy superfood. Spoiler alert, it's olive oil. You're probably used to cooking with it, but there are countless ways to use olive oil to help yourself look and feel younger. For example, olive oil is a natural way to help you achieve a more youthful appearance. Besides helping you look younger on the outside, it's a fantastic tool for your insides as well. According to Dr. Stephen Gundry, a famous cardiothoracic surgeon, nutrition expert, and health advocate, you should get as much high-quality olive oil into your daily routine as possible, whether it's taking a shot of it daily or keeping a bottle of it in your bathroom medicine cabinet. But what kind of olive oil is best for your health? Well, any olive oil can give you some benefits, but if you're looking to get the best results, it matters a lot which one you pick. The olive oil industry is huge. You can tell by the number of olive oil brands you see at the grocery store, and you can bet they're not all made with the consumer in mind, and many brands may even cut corners one way or another to increase profits. When Dr. Gundry came to this realization, he was appalled, but some olive oils are so powerful it may only take a few tablespoons a week to see these incredible health benefits. So how can you tell between an olive oil that can be a health booster and which one isn't up to par? Well, in an effort to answer that question, Dr. Gundry has decided to take a stand and release his personal research and findings. This video has gone viral since its release, and it's important you see it so you can start benefiting immediately. You can watch the video right now by going to getolive1.com/outspoken or by clicking on the link in the description box below. That's getolive1.com/outspoken, or just click on the link in the description box below. That's probably easier. People who have taken his advice have shared their results with him, saying the olive oil they bought after learning his simple rules has helped change their lives. So make sure you go to getolive1.com/outspoken or click on the link in the description box below this video. But now back to the show.
Yeah, no, I do think that's a good point. And I think the point on policy is crucial as well, because the gravity of the situation that Britain is in, I think few people are actually prepared to acknowledge. And the extent of change that's going to be necessary to right the course of this country is gargantuan, and the complexity of it, the legal complexity, the financial complexity, and so on, is also almost incomprehensible. And so, until a serious political force is prepared to have that conversation, I agree. I don't see things getting better in this country, and I would say that as a supporter of reform, they are yet to publish a comprehensive manifesto on their strategy. We've heard some policies, they have their contract with the people and all the rest of it. But in terms of an actual strategy for affecting change, because just saying you're going to do something is one thing, but actually explaining how you're going to do it is something else completely.
Well, of course, and
that's essential.
There can't be any form of denial that a lot of the positions have changed. And Nigel has made it clear that he doesn't stand by that contract for the people. And I think it's this tacking to the centre, which Rupert and Ben Habib have been right to point out. Now, I want to look specifically at the issue of Islam, because, of course, that's utterly key, as well as mass deportations. And I've got a couple of clips here which I want us to watch and analyse, of Farage in the past, which his detractors say prove that he has tacked to the centre on this one. So let's watch this speech first.
On the question of Islamification, I think we have to do a bit more, probably starting in our schools, to actually teach people of the values of our Judeo-Christian culture, the good that it's done, and all that it's represented over centuries. Because I'm getting a bit tired of my kids coming home from school being taught about every other religion in the world, celebrating every other religious holiday, but not actually being taught about Christianity. Maybe sacking the Archbishop of Canterbury and getting somebody decent would be good. There are over 20 police forces now in this country that turn a complete blind eye to the operation of Sharia courts and Sharia law. If you're not prepared as a nation from the top down to stand up for your cultures and your values, then those cultures and values will be threatened. And it's one of the ways in which I just have this huge admiration for what the Aussies have done over the last 20 years. I really do. I really do. They want people to go and live in Australia who will accept their customs, accept their culture, bring value to their country, and I agree with that. And if you listen to what John Howard and other PMs have said over the last 10 years, in the case of Islam, he said to them, you're welcome. You're welcome to come here and to have your children here and to bring them up as Australians. But if you're coming to take us over, you're not welcome. We need a little bit more backbone, do we not? In our church, in our police force, in our parliament.
And I would say, Bernie Spofforth, absolutely we need that type of backbone. But the irony is that if a Reform UK potential candidate were to say some of that today, they would genuinely not pass the vetting. That is now rhetoric that Nigel himself would say is, quote, extreme or far right. So he has changed. And I think it's almost gaslighting people to claim that he hasn't.
Yes, he has changed. And it's very odd because if you look back into the 1970s and you look at some old television programs with Enoch Powell, who I believe was a great hero of Nigel's. And Enoch Powell said some very sensible things. He said things like, yes, you can take in migrants in small numbers and they are more likely to take on your culture. But if you take them in vast numbers, then they will never take on someone else's culture. They will become a culture within their own space. So you'll have a situation in Britain where we have lots of different cultures of people and no nationalism at all, which is, of course, what Nigel used to talk about wanting. And it used to be a big flag for him to wave. Now his problem is he's been told, possibly by Yusuf, I don't know, but he's been told to go for the centre ground. And I think one of the reasons he's been told to go to the centre ground is because not only for numbers, but if he was to tell the truth to his core voters, they wouldn't vote for him. They just wouldn't vote for him, because in the next 10 years, the least of our problems will be sending migrants back. Now, we can do that. We can do it easily. If you look during COVID, we put up these huge hotels and we stuffed people into hotels and we wouldn't let them leave for 15 days until they passed a stupid up your nose test, which didn't work anyway, right? We did
Don't remind me
that.
of those days.
And then we charged those people. So we could easily do that with migrants, but no one's talking about the Migration Pact, are they? Which we signed by royal prerogative that we can't get out of unless we break international law. And Nigel is not being truthful with the public. And that's why he's come to the centre in the hope that no one will ask him. If he doesn't say how he's going to remove these people and how he's going to stop the boats, no one will ask him anymore, you see. And then average people will vote for him. I think it's incredibly underhand to lie to the public. You go with a message. If the public don't vote you in, you lost. That's democracy. You didn't make your argument well enough. But don't soften your argument so that you are able to continue a lie, because that's the position we're in at the moment.
Charlie, just before I bring you in, I want to show you another previous clip. This is Nigel Farage on Fox News. I think actually he's been interviewed by the now US Defense Secretary. Watch.
I've been saying for some years that we have a fifth column now living within our country who hate us and want to kill us. And when I first said that about 5 years ago, it was deemed to be very unpopular, but sadly, it's proved to be true. We, in terms of our policing numbers in this country, since 2010, we've had quite a big cut in police numbers in this country. So we've literally been getting everything wrong. And short term, if we use the army on the streets to leave the police freer to follow these 3,000 people and to try and get on top of this problem, that it's a good thing to do. And it's an admission, not so much that we've been invaded, it's an admission that government has not understood just how serious this problem is.
But Charlie, isn't the argument that Nigel's new rhetoric isn't appreciating how serious this problem is?
2 points here, I think, Dan. The first is what I can gather from the conversations I've had with senior figures in reform is that they believe the British public to be fairly moderate, right? And so to that end, they are seeking to moderate their rhetoric in order to win. The election, to gain power, and then to enact the kind of changes that this country needs. Now, I think I understand the strategy, I understand where they're coming from, but I think that if you go out and talk to people today in 2025 in Britain, if you go to the pub or speak to people in the street or anything like that, ordinary people, people are angry. People are really, really angry about what's going on in this country. And so I think that perhaps reform placed too much emphasis on the worldview and beliefs of the kind of media Westminster political bubble that they exist in. And but it's unavoidable to a certain extent. But Westminster and media circles are a hell of a lot more liberal than ordinary people, because ordinary people are very, very upset and they feel they have no voice. Reform looks to me like the only viable vehicle for real change in Britain. But ordinary people are just so furious, whether it's migration, whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's energy, whether it's deindustrialization, whether it's housing prices. All of these things are interlinked. But Britain's not in a good place. And so I don't know whether moderating is actually going to be an effective strategy, because I think what the British people want is radicalism. What the British people want is a real offering of change, and not the kind of change that's, the Labour's slogan at the last election was change. And look how good's that, look how well that's gone. But real change, fundamental change, a change in the way that we're governed, a change in the style of politics that leads this country. And I do think that reform is capable of doing that. But on that score, I think that the rhetoric that we were hearing from Farage just now on integration, and I don't know how long ago those clips were from, but even then he was talking about how the priority when it comes to mass immigration has to be integration and assimilation. Now, I would say that, to be honest, I reject the concept of integration in principle, to be honest with you. At this stage where integration has been shown to be a total myth, it hasn't worked. We're well beyond the point of integration now. I think that language needs to be dispensed with, as you know, as along with the language of values. You know, Britain in those clips by Farage was described as being a nation of values, that, you know, you can become British if you just buy into our values. And I personally think that's basically nonsense. I don't think that that's the way this country has ever operated. I think that that's a creation really of New Labour that has come into existence over the last 30 or so years, that has sought to transform Britain into a kind of American style propositional nation that's based on ideas and values and this sort of thing, rather than people. Because Britain, obviously, England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland is a nation that's thousands of years old and has had a settled indigenous population here for thousands of years. And the values that people like Farage and others talk about emerged out of those people. They didn't come from nowhere. They are a product of a specific time and place. And so if you do away with the people, well, the values disappear as well. So this idea that, you know, if you bring in 10 million migrants and if they just buy into democracy and the rule of law and individual liberty and free speech and all the rest of it, then they're just as British as anybody else, I think is nonsensical. I actually think that there's a little bit more to Britishness than just going along with what amounts to a 4-point political doctrine that could be presented on a corporate seminar slide. I think that Britishness is a far deeper, more profound thing than that. And it's not a costume that you can put on and take off. And this is a conversation that needs to happen in mainstream British politics, because this is at the crux of the immigration issue. And until we're prepared to get serious about what it actually means to be British, I just don't think that we are taking the problem seriously.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.